What's up, everyone? Elmi here, back again with my good friend Nick Mulae. And so, with the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie coming out on Netflix, thought we'd discuss the whole of the franchise from the very beginning up until now. When the first one came out in 1974, it was described as one of the most brutal horror films ever made.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, even though we now kind of see it's kind of a bloodless film, if you will, although it still has its gory moments.
There was not much gore in this compared to the future installments.
Yeah, and you know what's kind of odd is that this is something I don't think really a lot of people know about with the original Texas Chainsaw. Part of the reason why it's not as gory as we all anticipated is they actually were originally going to give it a PG rating.
Yeah, that's what Toby Hooper was aiming for when I first read that, and I was just like, "This was meant to be PG." I was like, "What?"
Kids were supposed to see it.
Kids were supposed to see that. A man with parts of other people's faces as a mask.
You got to teach your kids something.
Yeah, this would give kids nightmares, man. I can't believe this was actually originally aimed for a younger audience.
It was. Although, let's be honest, if it was released several years later, I'm sure it probably would have ended up getting a PG-13 rating instead. It's because they didn't have PG-13 back then.
No, definitely not. And if anything, I feel like this kid does teach kids lessons about picking up hitchhikers.
Yeah. Yes, definitely stranger danger, that's for sure.
And also have a full tank of gas inside your van, but then again, this was taking place during the 70s, which I believe, 1974. I believe that at the time the countries were going through all kinds of energy crises, like gas stations were running out of fuel.
Yep.
So that could have, because, unlike today, where I've driven through Texas before, and
I've gone through Texas.
And I made sure to stop at a gas station, have a full tank before going through deserts.
Yeah.
Before going through the middle of nowhere.
And one more thing it would teach kids is respect the dead.
Oh, yeah. Because the family in this film, the Sawyer family, they certainly did not. All that grave robbing and also assembling decor from bones and flesh and...
Yep.
And I know a lot of people say that, this film is inspired a lot of the violence we have today, which no, it's actually the other way around. This film, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original film, was actually inspired by real crimes, more specifically the real crimes committed by real serial killer Ed Gein.
Yeah, although not necessarily a serial killer. They always label him as that, but because in the end it turned out they said he claimed he only killed 2 individuals, but he was known to grave rob.
Well, yeah, there were 2 confirmed kills that he has committed, 2 confirmed murders. But he was notorious because that's one of the most appalling crimes he's committed is robbing cemeteries, taking their corpses and creating decor out of it, and
and much like the Sawyer family, even rumors of cannibalism as well.
Yeah, that's and also creating a decor out of people's faces that he cut off. So now you know where the idea for Leatherface came from.
Toby Hooper even once said that he thought he heard of a story where he wore a mask made out of human faces at a Halloween party. So
and no one suspected a thing.
That was long before the movie ever came out. So that was probably late 50s, early 60s. We're talking about here.
Surely there would be if Ed Gein had worn a mask like that, the smell of rotting flesh would have been a dead giveaway.
I'm sure he probably would have really cleaned it up good. That's all I could think of. They're probably like, that's a really cool mask.
My God.
But then you find out the true reality of it, and you're like, didn't know that.
Good God. But yeah, my grandpa Chuck originally told me about Ed Gein because he remembers the news reports and about the murders, when he was caught.
Oh, wow.
About when Ed Gein was caught back in 57. And
it was 1958.
Or 1958, yeah.
Late 1950s.
Yeah, late 1950s. And I don't know, my grandpa Chuck said, and I quote, Ed Gein was a sick man who was all sorts of messed up in the head.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, so...
And ironically enough, he also served as the inspiration for Norman Bates in Psycho.
And Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs.
Buffalo Bill, Silence of the Lambs, that's another one.
Yeah.
And all these killers that he's, inspired. In addition to that, too, I think it was, maybe 20 years ago or so, they finally made a movie about Ed Gein himself.
Yeah, and I believe Kane Hodder played Ed Gein.
Yeah, of course, Kane Hodder.
Jason Voorhees.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, the film, Basically, I just love what I like about the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like, it's like starts off with, oh, like don't pick up hitchhikers, but also don't go into houses in the middle of nowhere, because this is the house in particular. It's like you get that feeling, that sense of dread, like it's like when these characters go into that house, it's like they're stepping into a world of depravity and madness.
Yeah, it's just like there's like a almost like the best way I could describe it. It's almost like a claustrophobic like feeling.
It truly is. And it builds up to when he goes and investigates like a pig squealing, and then Leatherface just comes out with his big sledgehammer, just
sledgehammer.
boom, he's down, shaking, and he's not even dead yet. He has to
just...
hit him multiple times, drags his body, and then just slams that door.
Oh, yeah, and then as soon as he shuts the door, then all you just hear is this, like you wonder like what the hell is going on behind that door. That's the thing too with movies like that back in those days is. You don't see, that's probably the reason why they always sometimes say it's a gory film, but at the same time, you don't see anything that happens in that movie.
Off camera.
Not only that,
screen.
it happens, well, not only just that, it happens behind closed doors. So your mind, gives you an idea of what's happening.
Yeah, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like, well, I do agree with them. It just shows like a kind of brutality and violence that a lot of audiences, I'm pretty sure, at the time were not prepared for, because we see much worse things today.
So much worse. I mean,
the Saw franchise, the let's see. Oh, and also one film movie I'll never see again, Cannibal Holocaust, where they actually kill animals to make that film.
And one other franchise, which even though it's not real stuff, although ironically enough, director Ruggiero Deodato participated in the second film as a cameo, is the Hostels trilogy with its many brutal graphic sequences of torture.
Yeah.
So, I got obviously a lot of people out there who are opposed to the so-called torture porn genre, which is nothing like compared to like Texas Chainsaw or some of these other slasher films. And these films are not tongue-in-cheek. They're just dead serious. They go to the extreme. They are raw and just extremely violent.
Yeah, like, so that's like how Texas Chainsaw Massacre really changed the game as far as horror, like in introducing this menacing world full of brutality, and it gets pretty bad as the sequels go on.
Yeah. Though the sad part is, I should say, with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, despite the new one coming out, it's kind of a rarity that we see those kind of movies nowadays, because we don't really see a lot of those type of films really anymore, because the raw reality is it's because, well, the violence that's occurring in this world today. The raw reality is, the best way I could say is, the reason why we don't see these type of movies anymore, we've been beaten by reality. We just cannot compete with today's violent society.
Very true. A lot of people have like mixed feelings about Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Some people like it, some people didn't. But they do make it pretty obvious from the beginning that it's going to be have more comedy than the original, when they have a poster that's parodizing the poster from The Breakfast Club. Yeah, of the whole Sawyer family.
Yeah, that seemed kind of ridiculous. Honestly, I didn't even notice that until you recently brought that up. I never even noticed.
Yeah, and I do love Bill Moseley's performance in that film. He's a veteran as far as acting in horror films. He's like starred in more horror films than I can count.
And if you remember, we've met him. Remember?
Yep, great guy.
Back at the Fangoria convention of Fangoria Weekend of Horrors in Chicago back in now over a decade ago in 2009. We saw
so long ago, man.
Yeah. So and he was still doing really well, and of course he was still acting in a lot of these horror films. He's still going.
Yeah, he's still doing it. Yeah, and because I've seen him in brief performances, like in The Blob, and let's see, the Night of the Living Dead remake, which I think is criminally underrated. Seriously, both those remakes are criminally underrated. I will say that now for the record. But yeah, I did like his. I liked his performance as Chop Top. He was like both, like weird, silly, but also crazy, scary at the same time.
Yeah, kind of like a crazy psychopathic hillbilly, especially with that laugh.
Exactly. And like the big reveal as to why he's called Chop Top, and like there's that chrome plating in his head, and he's like. He's like he does this thing with a coat hanger where you just like itches and like
yeah.
I thought that was so bizarre.
I mean I just don't even understand or like how that's a good feeling. I mean, how is any of that considered like a really good thing to do?
No, Just another prime example of how the Sawyer family is messed up.
Yes, it really is. They really are.
You know what I also love in the second film? The performance of Dennis Hopper.
Dennis Hopper,
Dennis
yes.
Hopper, who I've seen in all kinds of films where he plays villains, but in this film, he wants to take revenge on the Sawyer family for the death of his nephew and the traumatizing experience that his niece went through, because he's the uncle of Sally and Franklin from the first movie.
Yep.
And he goes out to buy chainsaws of all things to exact his revenge. So yeah, before Dennis Hopper was planting bombs on buses to get back at Keanu Reeves, and before he was going to war on the waters with Kevin Costner, he was taking revenge against the Sawyer family.
That's right.
But, yeah, Dennis Hopper, brilliant actor, no longer with us, so sadly. Yeah, I can't believe it's been almost 12 years since he died.
Yeah, I didn't even realize it's been that long, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
I remember,
time's gone by quick.
I know. I remember one of the last films that he was in. It was Land of the Dead, where he played that
Yep.
that scumbag who was like running that entire city of the living, but disposing of anybody who opposed him.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, well, the first two Texas Chainsaw Massacre films, I felt like they were, definitely worth seeing. I felt like the third film is where they really started going downhill and inconsistent with what we know from the first two movies. Like
it fell apart pretty much.
Yes, like in the third film, so surprisingly, it had Viggo Mortensen, who I know from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. You know, he was a major character in that. But here, he just played another psychopath who was, yeah, it just has to be seen to be believed. But one thing that made this the third film very inconsistent is they changed the family. It's all completely new people now.
Yeah, it is, and there's it doesn't even show in any way, shape, or form of how it picks up from the last one. It's really, for the most part, kind of like really I would probably say more kind of a reboot. Basically a reboot, if anything, because it's like there's no trace of how it picks up from the last movie.
Nope.
Other than Leatherface, but that's basically it.
That's the only person that stayed with. But
it doesn't even make any references
to
the events of the first or second films.
Exactly. The third film, I consider, a lot of people say it's bad, but I just consider it meh, at least compared to what came after that. That god-awful, that horrible Texas Chainsaw Massacre Next Generation.
It's supposedly made, obviously, for the original's 20th anniversary.
Oh, yeah. And originally it was called Return of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but then, yeah, it did poorly in box office. Like, it was both a critical and financial failure, because in the box office, it didn't even make a third of its budget back.
Right. That was just...
Yeah, a film that was so bad that even Renee Zellweger or Matthew McConaughey's performances couldn't save it. Yep, you heard me correctly. Renee Zellweger and Matthew McConaughey. Yeah, you wouldn't expect them to be movies like this, but this is before they reached their stardom, like just a few years later.
Exactly.
I mean, Matthew McConaughey, he played a villain that I could not take seriously at all. It was just too goofy. I mean, he had like a cybernetic leg, and he was just like...
Yeah, what the hell was with the cybernetic leg that he had?
I have no idea.
That's what I was wondering. Like, what the hell's... I didn't even notice he had it until it started getting messed up.
Yeah.
Like, it started malfunctioning and stuff. I did not even notice he had it.
Yeah, and the fact that he just makes some, like... There was, like, few times in the film where he made weird sound effects when he was attacking people. And I'm just like, what? I'm like, what is this?
It was a film that could not be taken seriously. And I even wonder what Toby Hooper would have thought about it.
I'm sure he wanted as little to do with it as possible. I mean, yeah, because obviously you can tell I'm not a fan of The Next Generation. I hated it when I first saw it as a teenager, and I still hate it now. I mean, I hate it so much that I consider it to be the lowest point of the franchise.
Yeah.
And also, Next Generation, they couldn't even make the dinner scenes terrifying. I could not take that seriously at all. You know, I mean, to me, that was the scariest scene of the entire movie in the first film, the dinner scene, where they just are trying to off the final girl, then she takes off and escapes.
Yeah, that was completely the opposite for that movie.
Exact opposite. There was no suspense, no feeling of menace or claustrophobia. None of that is...
No helplessness.
No helplessness. None of that exists in The Next Generation.
You know, the other thing, too, you also have to realize, compared, like, with the original film and this one, is that when the original one came out, especially that infamous dinner scene, is that probably had to have been, at its time, one of the best horror film scenes to ever be shot, because the original one, that was basically about a film very much about, other than what you saw with the group first in the first part of the film, for the rest of it, This was basically a film very much about the killers and what they do when they're not going out killing people. And it's just so disturbing and horrifying. But when you go to the next generation, if they're trying to do the same thing, it's just literally nothing compared to that. Nothing compared to nothing compared to a truly original, terrifying scene where you finally get to see what serial killers do during their downtime when they're not hunting people. Because most movies, we usually see them always killing the people, but we never usually see what they do, like, beyond wherever they are.
Exactly.
But that film, the Texas Chainsaw, the original one, was the first to do that.
Oh, yes, for sure. That's that film is the reason why they stopped making Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies until 2003 with the reboot. Or remake.
Remake.
Right, yeah. Some people call it reboot. I call it a remake.
It's a remake.
That one I did enjoy. I felt like that was a fairly decent remake, and I believe that's also what sparked a whole lot of remakes that came after that. I mean, there was Dawn of the Dead, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and a long list of other things that were remade during like 10, 15 years. Yeah.
And now it's unbelievable that it's almost 20 years ago that remake was made, 2003.
And I feel like one of the major changes that they made to the film is changing the characters' last names, and also to Hewitt instead of Sawyer, and also giving Leatherface an official name for that film, Thomas Brown Hewitt.
Although, of course, law enforcement still called him Leatherface, but ironically enough, unlike the original films, the Hewitt family never referred to him as Leatherface, just as Thomas.
No, there was no mention of Leatherface until after when you see that
the found footage clip. Yeah. The law enforcement agencies dubbed him Leatherface, but not his own family.
Right, exactly. And again, they had some good performances by the actors, especially by Jessica Biel, because my family knows her from Seventh Heaven. Like that's one of her early roles. I remember her like in Blade Trinity. Like she was like one of the very few good things. One of the very few things I like about that film. So, and she did an amazing job as like the final girl in this. She put her all into it, and also one of the things I love, my favorite villain in this was not Leatherface, but it was also the Sheriff Hoyt, who was played by none other than Arlie Ermy, who I will forever know him as for his iconic and mostly improvised role as Sergeant Hartman in Full Metal Jacket.
Where in hell are you from anyway, Private? Sir, Texas, sir! Texas, only steers and queers come from Texas, Private Cowboy. And you don't much look like a steer to me, so that kind of narrows it down.
Sir, yes, sir!
Oh, man. But yeah, in this remake, I feel like they've really upped the... Well, I feel like it's not as menacing. They also upped the gore in this remake, definitely, because... They make it perfectly clear when they show Leatherface cutting off the boyfriend's face and then wearing it to terrify Jessica Biel.
And that's exactly what points out, like I said, kind of like with what I said about the original one. Like in the original one, we never saw that stuff happen. It always happened behind closed doors. But in the remake, this time you did actually see what was beyond those closed doors.
Yeah, very true. And the only thing I did think that was like kind of unnecessary in the remake was how they showed Leatherface like unmasked, like he takes his mask off.
And he took his mask off.
His nose missing, and
he was like horribly disfigured. Like, and it's never fully explained, like why he's disfigured, why he's missing his nose. I mean, there's some sites say that he might have had some kind of flesh-eating bacteria or something, and that actually explains why he would wear a mask.
Leprosy.
Or even that, it could be even possibly some kind of case of leprosy.
I can only guess.
And that's probably the reason why he wears a mask, to hide his deformities.
Could be. To me, it's either a birth defect or he has some sort of a disease eating away at him.
It's flesh-eating bacteria, or like you said, some kind of leprosy.
That'd be my guess. But so we've had that and a somewhat decent origin story in the... called Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning, which was released in 2006, with Arlie Ermy reprising his role and finding out how he became sheriff, or more specifically, how he became disguised as a sheriff.
But we also do get to finally learn a little bit, too, when Leatherface was born, briefly in the beginning. Kind of how it all started. I mean, I wish they could have added just a little bit more to the background, of the Hewitt family. I mean, we only got, maybe 5-10 minutes of how it all started, and then it goes right, I think it's to the late 1960s, I think it takes place. So
sounds about right.
It's just too bad. I just wish they could have at least had, maybe a couple more minutes to just explain more origins of the Hewitt family.
Yeah, that's true.
Although it's kind of weird, I got to point this out. It's kind of weird how the remake and its prequel that were made, neither one came out in the year 2004, which would have been the original's 30th anniversary.
Yeah, that's right.
Because the remake came out in 2003, and then the other one came out in 2006.
Yeah, I mean, like nobody, they didn't realize. Wait, maybe we should have this remake released on the 30th anniversary of the original. They didn't think that.
No, they didn't.
And now we got the new one that's about to come out, and which is like 2 years away from its 50th anniversary.
Jeez, I cannot believe they just can't hold it for the anniversary. Like, there's all these other films, these reboots, these remakes that come out on the anniversaries, and even if it's not like the 40 or 50th, it would be 45th or 55th or whatever. But you see that a lot with those films, but for some reason Texas Chainsaw just cannot keep up with its own anniversary dates.
Nope. And then finally we have the two films, a whole new timeline, which started in 2013, which with Texas Chainsaw 3D, which tries to completely cancel out the timeline from the original. Yeah, I mean,
it's one of those films that it ignores everything in between and just focuses on the original.
As long as we can ignore the timeline, which shows the events of New Generation, as long as it forgets that, I'm good.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that.
Yeah.
So because that doesn't even fit into it.
No. So basically, in Texas Chainsaw, it shows how the Sawyer family was killed by another family who was taking revenge for the death of some of their loved ones. But there was a baby that survives, and this was 1974, and then it goes to the year 2013, where we should be seeing a character that's 39, but instead is played by a 26-year-old Alexandra Daddario.
Unless it takes place like in the 90s or something like that. Or wait, no, it doesn't take place.
Nope.
I was going to say, if it took place in the 90s, that would be different, but,
it would have made a little bit more sense.
It would have made more sense, but the fact that it's taking place in 2013, which means if the person was born back in 1974, they'd be almost 40 years old.
Well, yeah, that is true, but even though that is questionable how that timeline would work as far as having someone who is definitely not a character that's definitely not 39 years old like they should be, it still was great to see Alexandra Daddario do a good performance for this film, and I felt like they really upped the gore in this. I mean, showing a guy getting completely cut in half with a chainsaw, like,
that's awesome.
Something you would typically expect in something that has the title Chainsaw Massacre in it. Like, you would expect more gore because you think about the kind of damage a chainsaw would do to somebody.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is the film that really shows it. Yeah. What I didn't like, however, was the final. I think it was like the final kill of. I think it was what was it? The sheriff? Or no, not the sheriff. The mayor. No, it was the mayor. What I didn't like in this film was the way that when it showed how the mayor died, it looked like some terrible game over screen because of the way the visual effects were played out in that.
That's awesome.
I know it just did not look realistic because of the visual effects that they used for the gore.
Was it CGI that they were using?
Yeah,
probably.
Terrible
I
CGI.
figured it was.
It was terrible CGI.
Yep.
When it shows his hands cut off and then going into a meat grinder or something.
CGI just never works.
No. So, well, there are some occasions where it does, but this is
in this case, no.
So I feel like the story in Texas Chainsaw was very questionable for another reason. Why didn't Heather wait until the last minute to read that letter that described her whole heritage?
Really.
Even after she was told to read it right from the get-go.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense that she didn't read it, because if that was me in that situation, I would read the entire letter from start to finish.
Yeah, especially when you were granted an estate, that was in your name.
Yeah,
don't you want to know all the details?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the one part of the story I did not get. I guess they just had her not read it just to build up more mystery as to why all this was going on, but it just didn't make sense the way they did it.
Yeah.
And then in, I believe it was 2017 when they released the following chapter of that timeline, which was Leatherface, which is another origin story about how Leatherface became to be who he was, at least in this timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it, though, so I haven't really seen too much. I mean, I don't really know too much of it, so
I see.
It's really the only one out of the entire franchise I haven't really seen.
I mean, to me, it's just all right. I mean, there are some twists in it. I don't want to spoil it for you because you haven't seen it just yet, but let's just say Leatherface does not turn out to be who you think he is. Like, you suspect somebody of being him, but it turns out it's not.
Oh, okay, that would make sense.
Yeah, so, and obviously, like, it also continues on with the whole origin of how these two families, the Sawyer family was at war with the other family in Texas Chainsaw.
Okay.
So I will say that. I mean, I was going to go into more detail about that film, but I don't want to spoil that for
Yeah, unfortunately. I mean, if I saw it, obviously in advance, I'm sure we would have talked about them, but unfortunately, I haven't seen. That's like I said. That's the only one I have not seen.
I got you, man. So yeah, this new one, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, coming out on Netflix. It looks like it's taken the whole Halloween reboot approach, how Halloween 2018 kind of did with Laurie facing the killer from her past. Well, now it's Sally facing the killer from her past.
So once again, just like obviously with Halloween, and also kind of like Texas Chainsaw 3D, this is basically that kind of film where it's ignoring everything in between once again and focusing just on the original one.
You got it. That's exactly what
they always do.
It's exactly what this is going for. It's trying to like make us. It's like it's trying to forget timelines where they screwed up. Well, the problem is I haven't forgotten.
Well, I'm sure just like in the reboot of Halloween, I'm sure just like in the reboot of Halloween, I'm sure they're probably going to make references to the other films, and that's what they did with Halloween 2018. Is that yes, it ignores everything in between except focusing on the original Halloween, but they still paid homage and made references to the sequels.
Like the masks from the third film.
Yep, the masks from the third film. So I'm sure the Silver Shamrock masks. Yeah, so I'm sure they're probably going to do something like that too for Texas Chainsaw.
Yeah, it looks like they already were from the trailer because it looks like they showed the house from the original film.
Exactly.
I would actually like to visit that house, as crazy as that sounds.
Yeah. Well, then again, I mean, if it's a restaurant or something, I mean, it's open to the public.
Yeah,
but you kind of have to worry about that. So, now if it's still a restaurant, I mean, that may be great and all, but what are they serving?
Oh God, I'd hate to even know. Now that you just mentioned it. Oh God.
Just make sure to order a small salad with it.
Or vegetarian products only. That's the way to be safe.
Oh boy.
So this new Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I've seen the trailer. Did you see my reaction video to it yet?
No, not yet. Yeah, I still plan on it.
Well, I'm putting the link in the description for that. Definitely check that out because I don't know. To me, it looks like it could be pretty good. I mean, there are a few changes, such as like Leatherface's mask is different. So yeah, Texas Chainsaw Massacre coming out to Netflix. Cannot wait for it. Yeah, I'm betting you're gonna see it too, right?
Yep. Oh, I am.
Yeah, it looks promising. Cannot wait. Yeah, like seeing Sally face the killer from her past. This is going to be good.
The only thing I just wish that, the only thing that's really missing, I want to say, is that it's too bad that obviously the original actress who played Sally Hardesty, Marilyn Burns, had passed away a couple of years ago. But you know what? Really,
actually, not more than a couple of years ago. I think, was it 2014? Was it?
It was a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But I want to say though, what would really be cool if she was still alive today is if it was kind of like what they. Kind of like with Halloween, if you will. Like they have like segments of her, like what she looks like now, and then have have the rest, like a good portion of the movie in a flashback when she was younger, and then focus on her again at her current age. That would have been really cool.
I mean, before she died, she did do cameos in the films. The 2013 one, Texas Chainsaw, she did a cameo in that, playing Heather's grandmother, I believe it was.
I think it was.
Yeah, and but I still consider that better than that very brief and pointless cameo in The Next Generation. And that cameo made no sense because they said in the opening text scroll in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 that she died while in healthcare.
Yeah, so, that's just like unless they just brought her body out and she just had that look.
No, I'm pretty sure she was alive in that. In the fourth.
Like that was their last look, like as if she knew what was happening. But I gotta say too. I mean, one other thing, and I've said this already. Like with I already forgot his name, but I was also fortunate enough to meet her too. Also at that same con. I don't know if did you ever meet her? Or,
I don't believe I did.
I was fortunate enough to meet her myself at that same con. Like I think it was 2 days before you.
The same con we went to.
Vangoria's Weekend of Horrors.
Wait, it's coming back to me now. I think I did meet her.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah.
So we both met her then.
Yeah. Yeah, no, one of my favorite final girls of horror. Yeah, definitely.
One of the first too.
Oh yeah, that's true. Like that's the thing. A lot of people like say Halloween is original in many aspects, which it is, but it did adopt some things in the past, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre being one of them, as far as a final girl, a final survivor escaping from a hellish nightmare.
Yeah, and there's just basically that. It's just sending that kind of message saying, girls don't need help; they could save themselves.
Yeah, even if it means jumping out of a 2-story window without sustaining that much bad injuries.
If it's gonna hurt, and if it's their willingness, their only way of surviving this whole ordeal, you're gonna get hurt in some point. I mean, that's kind of unfortunately the raw reality. But again, they don't need help; girls can save themselves.
Yep, yeah, girls. If anything, it shows that in Texas Chainsaw Massacre that women can prove to be powerful characters.
Yep. They're as long as they're the ones who obviously are kind of more focusing, as we usually see in later slasher films, the one who doesn't, do the drugs, the inappropriate behavior, the one who's more focused, the more serious one.
The one who has the survival instinct.
Who has the survival instinct, the one who kind of understands what's going on, and not being as, stupidous as her other friends are, is the one that's going to, take down the killer.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So that about wraps up this discussion. Hope you guys enjoyed. And thank you for watching. Subscribe, like, and share, and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed. And Nick, thank you so much for joining me on this. And be sure to check out his channel. I'll put the link in the description below. But yeah, thanks so much for joining me on this.
Yes, you're very welcome. I always enjoy doing this. And yes, and also for those that don't know, on my channel, I do scary story audio books, which are books based on the Scary Stories trilogy.
Oh yeah.
I actually have two new audiobooks coming out. One that's going to be narrated by myself, and then I got another one that's going to be hosted by several different paranormal and horror film podcasters. So be sure to check out my channel and these two new audiobooks will be coming soon. So stay tuned if you want to stay in touch.
Nice. Yeah, I'm definitely going to look at those as well.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I'm excited.
Same here, man. Okay, thank you guys for watching. Have a nice day. See ya.